Chapter 13. The meal was excellent. Halt insisted that they should enjoy the food without being distracted by discussing business. "Time enough for that when we have coffee," he said firmly. He successfully dodged the subject of what he had been doing by asking for details of the gathering, the first he'd missed in many years. He smiled quietly as Will described his effort with the 3 first-year apprentices, and nodded in satisfaction when he heard of Gillen's promotion to Whitby Fife, and the fact that he would be available to take over Redmont if Halt and Will were sent on a mission. "I wondered how you'd manage that," he said to Crowley. "Good thinking." Crowley smiled in a self-satisfied way. "As I told Will, I'm a genius when it comes to organisation," he said. Halt raised an eyebrow at that, but made no further comment. Then, at Halt's prompting, Lady Pauline brought him up to date on events at Castle Redmont since he'd been gone. His eyes widened when she related how Sir Rodney, head of the battle school, had recently been keeping company with Lady Margaret, a rather attractive widow. "Rodney?" he asked incredulously. "But he's a dyed-in-the-wool, cranky old bachelor." "Just what they used to say about you," Pauline replied calmly, and he nodded, conceding the point. "So, Rodney ready to settle down, eh? Who would have thought it? I suppose you'll be next, Crowley." Crowley shook his head. "Married to the job, Halt, and never found the right woman." In truth, Crowley had long harboured a deeply felt admiration for Lady Pauline. But being one of the few people in the kingdom who knew how things stood between her and Halt, he had never let the fact be known. Eventually, the meal was finished and Rafe set the coffee pot and cups out on the table, fortunately without having to resort to any phantom sword brandishing. Pauline watched with a tolerant smile as Halt took a long sip of his coffee, smacking his lips in appreciation. Then he set his cup down and leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Right," he said, "let's get to it. The outsiders are back in business and they're planning on returning to Araluen, just as soon as they've got Hibernia under their thumbs." "Hibernia?" Lady Pauline said in surprise. "What are they doing there?" "Basically taking control of the country," Halt told her. "When we chased them out of Araluen, some of them made it to Hibernia. They've been waiting there, gathering strength and numbers, and gradually undermining the 6 kingdoms. They've almost completed that task. They've got control of 5 of the kingdoms. Only Clonmel is left, and that's due to go soon." "Clonmel? That's where you came from, isn't it, Halt?" Will looked up in interest as Halt nodded. He'd always had a vague idea that Halt had originally come from Hibernia, but this was the first time he'd heard it confirmed. "Yes," he said, "King Ferris of Clonmel is weak, and like all the Hibernian kings, he's so busy worrying that one of the other kings is about to betray him or usurp his throne, he's missed the real threat." "These outsiders are getting ambitious, aren't they?" Lady Pauline said. "They used to be thieves and criminals, which is bad enough. But now you say they're actually seizing power in Hibernia." Halt nodded. "They create chaos and fear throughout the countryside. When the king is too weak or self-centered to protect his people, they step in and offer to solve the problem." "Easy for them to do, of course," Crowley put in, "since they're the ones causing it." "That's right," Halt replied. "Pretty soon they're seen as the only people who can keep the peace. They gain power and influence. More and more converts join their band, and from there it's a short step to taking control." Will frowned. "But why do the Hibernian kings stand for it? Surely they can see they're being undermined." "The leader of the outsiders is a man called Tennyson," Halt told him. and he's been clever enough not to oppose any of the kings directly. He lets them stay on the throne, but he takes effective control of the kingdom. He assumes all the real power and influence and money. While the king retains the appearance of being in charge? Pauline asked. That's right, and for most of them so far, that's enough. They can't be much use as kings then, Will said in disgust. Halt nodded, a look of sadness in his eyes. They're not. They're weak and self-interested. And that's created an opportunity for a strong, charismatic leader like this Tennyson to step in and provide leadership and a sense of stability. He's already managed it in 5 of the kingdoms. Now it looks as if Clonmel will be next. Halt! Crowley leaned forward in his turn now, his eyes seeking out those of his old friend. All of this is tragic for Hibernia, of course. But how does it concern Araluen? I'm sorry if I sound a little cold-blooded there, but I'm sure you take my meaning. Will looked quickly between the 2 senior rangers. He could see what Crowley meant. Halt was affected by this because he was Hibernian by birth. But what did it have to do with his adopted homeland? I do indeed, Crowley, Halt was saying. No need to apologise. It affects us because once Tennyson has taken control in Clonmel, the last of the 6 Hibernian kingdoms, he's planning to use it as a base to return to Araluen. You know this for a fact? Crowley asked. Halt nodded. I have a prisoner who'll swear to it, he said. His name is Farrell, and he was sent to prepare a foothold in Araluen at the port of Selsey. That's where I've been, he added. It's a safe harbour and it's out of the way. Just the place Tennyson would choose to bring his damned cult back here. And you're suggesting that we should stop him before he does so, Lady Pauline said. Halt glanced at her. You don't wait for a snake to bite you before you kill it, he told her. I'd rather stop them now before they gather any more momentum. Do you think that you're up to the task? Just you and Will? Crowley asked. And Horace, Halt added. The Commandant nodded, conceding the point. And Horace. You don't think you'd need a larger force? We can hardly invade Hibernia. King Ferris hasn't asked for our help, nor is he likely to. I think we're better suited fighting trickery and superstition with more trickery and more superstition. There's an old Hibernian legend about a master swordsman from the east that I thought I could make use of. Horace, naturally, Will put in, and his old teacher smiled at him. Exactly. I feel we can approach King Ferris of Clonmel and convince him to resist the outsiders. If we can break their power in Clonmel, we can roll them back through the other kingdoms. And keep them out of Araluen, Alice said. It's a matter of momentum. If we can stop theirs, people will have time to see that they're being tricked. A movement like this either keeps rolling or collapses. It can't stay still. What makes you think you can get this King Ferris to listen to you? Does he know you? Crowley asked. Yeah, he knows me all right, Halt said. He's my brother.